Again, we always like to encourage you, the viewing audience, to engage in our conversation. You can head over to Facebook and enter your questions for the governor, or you can also email us here at spotlightnow@hawaiinewsnow.com.
We've got some of those questions in the queue. We want to welcome in our first guest, our first and only guest for this full hour, and that is the governor. Thanks for being here, sir.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Well, let's dive right in. Carl Bonham and his organization, University of Hawaii Economic Research Organization, last week announcing that we could be entering in, or may already be in, a mild recession here in the state of Hawaii. What is your, what are the indicators that you are seeing, and what can be done?
Sure. So we have a great deal of respect for Carl and his team. We use them actually as our advisors. So we hear what you hear. The true definition of a recession is 2 consecutive quarters with negative growth and usually job loss. So what he's saying is the economy is softened, and sometimes you don't see some of those pieces of data until later. But it's definitely true that economically we are softer. The reasons for that are that the combo of tariffs and therefore less confidence in economic capacity and less travelers and so on means less revenue for Hawaii. We project that we're about $3 billion down over the course of this year. And so our state government has to have a balanced budget, so we have to make that up. We're doing fine, but let me tell you where we are. Okay, so there are fewer travelers. We've actually had decent revenues coming in, and year over year, they have to project how much money is going to come in the next quarter so that we can know exactly where we will be in this year, the next year, and so on. We always project 6 years out. A couple of years ago, as you know, because affordability is our biggest issue, from my perspective and most people's perspective, we lowered taxes by $5.5 billion over the course of like a 6-year period. In order to cover some of that $3 billion so that we keep a balanced budget, after the third year of the tax break, which will be 2026, we will pause. We are proposing, and we'll work with the legislature, we will pause the next couple years of the further deeper tax breaks to recoup $1.8 billion. And then in turn, we will put $600 million of that back into people's lives that really need it, like for food security, food tax credits. So we're going to bring $1.2 billion back that was projected to be tax breaks. We've already locked in over $4 billion for working families. So people don't have to worry their taxes are not going to go up. We're just going to pause so that in years 4, 5, and 6, we can not lose jobs, not have to let anybody go, not change services. That's the big plan. In fact, I don't know if people will be able to see this, but I'll hold this up. This was before action was taken. It's kind of an interesting document. This is our day-over-day document. So had we done nothing, we would have been looking at a deficit in the fiscal year 28, 9, 30, and 31 of $300 million, then $800 million, then $1.1 billion, okay? Now, after taking this action and bringing those dollars back, in other words, not making a deeper tax cut, especially for people that are more wealthy, a lot of them got tax breaks from the federal government, it'll look like this. We will then have a surplus of $1.035 billion, $891 million, $1.016 billion, and $1.414 billion. So that's what the projection will look like there. Now, I have to give you a caveat. This is all before we still hear what UHERO is going to do on January 7th at 2 p.m. If they lower us another percent, that brings down our revenues again, but we will still have a balanced budget even with that 1% projection. Also, we are going to see a surge in work, revenue, and economic activity because there's about $7 billion coming into Maui for the recovery. They're capturing some of that, but it's difficult to capture the full economic impact of that. That's from the settlement after the wildfire, the insurance payments of $3 billion, and FEMA $1.6 billion. So you will see building booming in Hawaii while you have a slight softening of tourism. Another piece of good news is the Japanese tourists have begun to return. We had over 40,000 people at the rain-soaked marathon the other day, okay? So there are some good signs. There are some tough signs. I'll balance the budget without having to make cuts.
Okay, I want to key into one thing you said. You said January 7th. Is that the Council on Revenues or is that UHERO?
Forgive me, the Council on Revenues.
Okay.
So, which are guided in part by UHERO because Bonham is on the thing. So, so there's a lot of, overlap. They work very closely together. Our hope is that we don't see quite that much downturn. A lot of this is, it's complicated because we received, for example, a $300 million one-time kind of surge in tax collections because of an estate tax that came in back a year or a year and a half ago. That sends a ripple effect through our economic projections. That was one thing. Plus, we're coming off of some of the COVID dollars still. And that sent a lot of money into states. And those were one-time infusions, which really need to be treated like one-time infusions because they don't just keep coming. So there's been up and down economic balance sheet for a lot of states like ours. But big picture, I can balance the budget just by pausing that very large tax break after 3 years of implementation. So again, people still, wherever their taxes are, they're going to go down again in 2026. They will not go down further in 27, 28, or 29. And then we'll see if the economy picks up, if we no longer have the pressure from tariffs, if we see people feeling confident in our economy and there is no recession, then we can resume them. But that's a question that I have to work out with the legislature, and they seem to be supportive.
Yeah, so just a quick follow-up on that. Is that something that's going to require legislative process, a bill? This all have to be amended, and our leadership in both the House and Senate open to this, this plan?
Yes and yes. I've had many meetings with them. We all see this as necessary. The tax break that we proposed initially in my first year, and then the second part of it, the second year, was actually more modest than they ultimately approved. I'm grateful that they approved that very big tax break because people really needed it. But that was a circumstance where we didn't know if in these out years, because we were looking at the years 4, 5, and 6, if we could afford it. Turns out after losing $3 billion because of federal activities, I also should have mentioned probably the shutdown didn't help us at all. We just have to do this. Another thing that happened was I was a little careful. I line item vetoed $1 billion, and we put that money into the rainy day fund. So we have $1.6 billion in the rainy day fund right now. And these charts I showed you do not take into account taking any money from that. So that's another buffer, so that if after January 7th and the Council on Revenues says things are going to be even tougher, we've already begun to have those discussions. I mean, it is kind of raining when you think about the impact of economic challenges from the federal government. We're prepared to use some rainy day funds rather than see anybody lose a job or lose services for homelessness or lose housing starts. We don't want to do those things because we believe very strongly we have to build housing for our state. We have to provide health care.
Let's talk about healthcare, about the Obamacare subsidies. That is something that you have proposed,
Yes.
covering those subsidies with some kind of a tax rate. Talk about that. We know that there's still conflict in Washington. We could see another shutdown in January. What are you looking at in terms of the state stepping in?
So I analyzed it, and our state, we insure people better than any other state. So we have the Prepaid Health Act. So if you're an employee and you work half-time or more, you get your health care covered. So we already have very few people that are uninsured. However, we could see as many as 24,000 people have their insurance be vulnerable if the Affordable Care Act starts to crumble. If they don't extend this tax break, this extended or enhanced tax break, which it appears that the U.S. Senate and House are not going to extend, our delegation would, mind you, but the others are not talking about doing it, then as many as 24,000 of our people could be vulnerable. So what I did is I checked out what it would cost us to provide that enhanced tax credit so that people could still have their ACA or their insurance through the exchange. It would cost us $16.5 million. And I proposed that in our budget. It's included in these numbers, by the way. The reason for that is the consequences of not doing it and having uninsured people all over the place is about a $150 million hit to us. So instead of having a $150 million hit to our hospitals and our healthcare providers, seeing some clinics close or maybe some hospitals close, this actually is, in my opinion, the right thing to do, which is keep people insured, have them be able to pay their bills, and try to weather this storm. Now, I have reached out to the federal administration to explain this to them. It's 24,000 people for us. It's 4 million people nationally. It's many billions of dollars that will come out of the economy if they do this. It's a very big mistake to let the Affordable Care Act crumble, but it's an ideological chasm between the right-leaning elected officials and the left-leaning elected officials. There's no common space right now. If I had my way, I think they should extend the system a year and then have a real thoughtful conversation about how to look at healthcare. There is waste in healthcare. I'm sure we're going to talk about what's being proposed here in our state at some point, but you can save a lot of money in healthcare, but you're not going to do it if you just yank the rug out from under people that are on the Affordable Care Act, because those guys, well, 8.5% of the people that are in red states use it, 3.5% in blue states. It's going to be very bad for rural communities. I will tell you, just for what it's worth, it's going to be catastrophic politically for the current majority. They're going to lose tons and tons of support if they let people become uninsured in their rural areas, and it's going to close rural hospitals, which means that not just the people that were insured losing their health insurance, they're losing their providers. Other people are going to not have a hospital, and they're going to have to drive forever to get, treatment for cancer or deliver their babies or whatever. So they're really messing around with healthcare in a bad way, and I'm not going to let it happen here.
I want to go also back to what you were talking about with the rainy day fund, because for a long time now we've heard it's there if we need it, and it does sound like this is the session that we're actually going to have to dip into that. How much of that do you foresee us having to use of the rainy day fund, and the plan overall to manage what has been something that has kind of been on the shelf for a while now, but actually something that we have to look into?
Yeah, so I did a personal review of the rainy day fund last week, and it's been pretty interesting. So when I came into office, it was hovering around $300 or $400 million. We're now at 1.6 billion. I think we're probably going to have to use, and it's going to be completely dependent on what the Council on Revenues does, we're probably going to have to use a couple $100 million a year. I would not be surprised at all. Now, maybe we'll get lucky and they won't lower the expectations too much. Maybe the economy will start flaring positively sooner, but I will not be surprised if we have to use $200, $300, or $400 million of that 1.6 billion. Now, when have we used the rainy day in the past? When COVID was raging and we shut down the state. We shut down the state on March 15th, 2020. I remember that day very well, okay? And we reopened it about like 7 months later in October. So we had that 7-month period where there was nobody coming here, and in order to make payroll, we had to use as much as $300 million of the rainy day fund, and there wasn't much more than that in there at the time. And I think it was a necessary survival decision. I think it was the right decision that the previous governor made. And then the economy started going up because we opened up, we started getting revenue from travelers, and we got federal revenues, a lot of them, like a lot of states, and we were able to build a surplus and then save again in the rainy day fund. So the rainy day fund went from here and down during COVID, and then it went way up when I inherited this job, and then we've kept it steady and let it grow steadily until probably next year. And I mean 2026, like a month from now, when I will not be surprised at all if we have to use it to keep people health coverage insured, and if we have to keep people fed, like we did with the $42 million of SNAP monies, although I was able to use some other monies like the TANF dollars. But it's necessary because when people are really struggling economically, I would rather maintain most of the tax breaks, maintain all of the housing programs, and do some other things that we need to do. Like, we don't want to suddenly stop our plans on promoting Hawaii. We don't want to suddenly move away from tax credits, say, that the film industry was planning on using, because then we'll lose those jobs. We don't want to suddenly stop marketing Hawaii, even though it seems like, okay, well, why would you spend $10 million on marketing Hawaii? Well, it's to bring $500 million in of jobs and economic activity. So long-term planning is important, and if you have the capacity to buffer these tough times, that's when you use a rainy day fund.
Okay, on this topic of marketing Hawaii and tourism in general, we are going to be without a convention center for about 2 years if the repairs happen according to schedule. What are your thoughts about what we do in the interim and how we make up for all of that convention business? Because that is a lot of money.
It is. One thing that's important to know is that sooner or later we're going to have to do this roof. And I think that they've probably delayed the process a few times because it's really tough to move away from that opportunity. So we're trying to put whatever programming we can into the 2028-29 cycle. We understand some people don't want to wait, and we miss some revenues. The other thing that we're able to do is on weekends and evenings, we're still able to use much of the facility. It's not going to be fully closed or shuttered. It's just some of it will be off limits because the roof work will be going on. I've asked them to accelerate the work. One thing that, even though I have a lot of capacity as governor, one thing I can't do is really change the physical timetable on some of this work. So we'll endure. Some of the other things that we're doing is we're taking this opportunity to build other, opportunities out. It's why we really need to get the stadium done. We need that as an opportunity. We need it as a gathering place. We need the entire entertainment district available to us. We should have had it a decade ago, because if we had that, we would be able to deflect. If we had some ballrooms over there or some extra hotels over there or extra facilities at a stadium, which a lot of people use for these big gatherings, we'd already have that rather than relying just on the convention center. It will be a little tough. People do understand. You got to, in my opinion, look at the long game. Sooner or later, we had to do this. I'm not going to put projects off under my tenure here just because it would be expedient. I know it's going to have a little sting. It's another reason probably we're going to need some of those dollars from the rainy day fund, again, to make sure that we don't lay people off, that we get these projects done. We haven't done big projects in a while, as you know, and that's been one of the concerns that people have about Hawaii.
When you look at the forecast, obviously tourism plays a big part of it, and you mentioned that as an indicator of where we're going and how we can plan out the future. In talking recently with some industry leaders from the tourism industry, many are concerned about the way in which we are moving away from marketing Hawaii, saying that Hawaii is getting beat out by other destinations like Mexico, other places in the Pacific and in the Caribbean. And when you go to these worldwide national conventions, at times these officials have said that it's almost embarrassing because Hawaii just does not have the presence that it once was, and we can no longer rely on Hawaii to market ourselves. Knowing how much tourism plays into that, what would you say to those industry officials who feel that we're not doing enough? And how can the state and HTA, with the restructuring that's going on there, help to lead Hawaii back to bring visitors in, knowing that it's so important?
So, first of all, I appreciate the input that they give. Let me be a little bit provocative here, okay? People who love golf come to me and they say, put a ton of extra money into golf programs and bringing those tournaments here. And I get it. It's great to have to market the state. But you have to balance that against all things. People who love to fill the hotels, and it's critically important. Of course, another $20 million makes it easier to fill the hotels. But everything has to be balanced. I will do my very best to find extra resources. We are going to be marketing Hawaii through some other new means that you know about. For example, this is a one-off, we made a strategic investment in the Los Angeles Rams to come here. It's about to pay dividends because it turns out the Rams were very good this year and they're probably headed to the Super Bowl. We're getting a ton of extra advertising in our most major market, which is California. The Los Angeles market is going to be booming because we're going to get a lot of extra free advertising, quote unquote. We invested in it modestly, but now the whole world will be watching. And so we have to spread out our marketing dollars. I would like to see more marketing dollars go in. I definitely do not want to cut marketing budgets, even though Carl is arguing that we're at the edge of a recession. I'm not sure he's saying we're in a recession, but we're close to it. Because you want to be thinking about the out years. We want to be thinking about bookings in 26, 27, 28. I personally believe, and people can try to convince me otherwise, that Hawaii is doing fine as far as the opinion of traveling to Hawaii goes. A lot of people tell me, don't change anything about Hawaii. We know you're there. We're going to keep coming. Certainly the Japanese community knows that. But it is true that other people are using their dollars to try to steal our visitors. Remember, when I came in 2022, there was a large sentiment that we had too many travelers to Hawaii. So again, balance the right number of travelers with the right amount of revenue, with the right amount of advertising. I think we should make sure that we establish that we are still a super sound place to visit. One of the reasons we passed the green fee was to have extra resources to invest, to improve our parks, to make sure that people, when they come to Hawaii, they get the very best experience, that we don't lose the reef, that we don't lose the beaches. The people that want extra advertising dollars, one of the same things that they want is me to restore the beaches, which I'm going to do with those green fees, so that when people think about the travel to Hawaii, it was like, oh, wow, it's still fantastic. Again, it's all a balancing act. There are other people that are coming to ask me, and I understand, for the NIL support. That's the support for the university. It's difficult to come up with money, but I see the value in it to a degree too, because if our football team is thriving and people are seeing it on TV and we have that energy here, it's also good for us. So I have to constantly monitor what a good return on investment is. And I will always do my best to make a good return on investment. And I hope that people will understand when I put these line items in there in the budget, a couple million here, a couple million there, it's meant to generate more revenue so that we can pay for schools and hospitals.
You brought up the green fee, so I want to ask you about that. Green Fee Advisory Council has been meeting. They're going to be giving you some recommendation, and I understand that those are going to be announced pretty soon. What have you heard so far? I know my understanding is that the list of ask versus the money that is available, certainly not a match, but where do you want to put that money?
Right, so we're going to make it very balanced in 3 buckets as promised, okay? One thing we have to do with the money is to protect the environment. So that's where we're going to restore the reefs and the beaches, and that's going to be a big deal because it also helps with tourism. So a third of the money goes there. A third of the money is going to go towards things like safety, pure safety activities like having fire breaks so that on Maui and especially West Maui and western side of Big Island and Oahu for that matter, we don't have risks of fire, which also has big cost when I have to come up with extra monies to put out fires or to do, God knows what after we've had a disaster. So that's the next bucket. And then the final bucket is directly to support industry and tourism, which brings more money in. And that's where some of this money could be considered to promote the brand. And not perhaps directly as advertising dollars, but they will be able to advertise off of that when they say these 5 beach parks have been perfect and now come back and renew your love for Maui, renew your love for Kauai because these things are special again. So it all is a part of the method that we have, which is find resources, in this case from the travelers. We did get about $4 billion of asks for $100 million. So it's really a huge demand to do these projects, which have not been funded for decades. Keep in mind that over the coming sessions, we will also encourage this committee and the legislature to take bonds out for bigger projects. So for every $4.5 million, they can borrow $100 million and finance it through this green fee. And that means we can do big projects if we need them. If we ever have another disaster, if one of the mayors comes to us and says, I need $500 million for a major project, the Alawai question comes to mind, we'll be there for them. So this was an idea to help us for future generations, and it's just starting on January 1st. We're also working with the cruise ships to kind of deal with that challenge. They were upset because some of this is applied to them. We think we may have a solution. Our team is working it out with them. We'd love to see the lawsuit go away, but I'm not afraid of lawsuits. I think lawsuits are part of the process. It's the way people kind of do business and communication sometimes. You're seeing that on the Maui water question. You're seeing it here with this green fee. But we want people to understand that investing in Hawaii now helps us in the future, and that's what the green fee does.
I do want to switch gears if we can talk a little bit about ICE enforcement in Hawaii and where things stand right now. What are your thoughts about this as what we see happening on a national stage has found its way here, and there are many who in the community who are, quite frankly, they're worried about what could happen to loved ones and just what's ahead. We hear that there is some movement that is happening in the legislature that could come in the form of legislative structuring of how to protect some of these immigrants. Your thoughts overall on where we stand as a state and trying to find this medium to support those who call this place home now?
It's a big question. First of all, I expressed directly to the administration, and so did Ann Lopez. She's a terrific attorney general. She's really been in constant communication with the ICE team. We do not support any activities that they do when targeting individuals that have been living in good standing and have been good citizens. We just tell them we can't be a part of that. And we're going to provide that value to the federal government. I mean, our moral values. So we don't help them at all when they're trying to, ask an immigrant or take an immigrant away from us if they're in good standing. If someone's a criminal, then we will participate, and if someone's got criminal convictions, we agree that unfortunately they're going to have to go. So it is a balance, but we have not signed any agreements. That would all be, believe me, some kind of mythology in social media or somewhere. We don't do that. I was just on the phone with a very senior person in the administration just minutes ago and reiterating some of my concerns about how the federal government engages with Hawaii. So it's constant. what I do think is, I do think they have to come to an agreement on an immigration bill. I was contacted by one of the president's deputies a week ago to come up with some concepts for immigration reform, something that could be tolerated somewhere in the middle of the political dialogue. I proposed things like, if a person has been here for 10 years already and is working in an established industry that's necessary, that they be given citizenship with a 1-year probationary period. That after that year, if they haven't committed a crime, they have their full citizenship. That's a category A. A category B would be if they've been here 5 years, but they're working in an essential job, that they get a citizenship status, but they then also have a slightly longer, a longer probationary period. And there's a series of steps that could be done like that. I have no doubt it will be a war to get anything passed through the U.S. Congress, but something that is common sense. They've already actually made some allowances for essential workforce disciplines like farming and tourism. Interestingly, we should do that for healthcare people. We should do it for anybody who is in kind of good standing in our country. Remember, most of us were immigrants, or our parents or grandparents. I mean, for goodness sake, the president's wife is an immigrant, so I think it is good for us to accept people into our country and to treat them with dignity. So that's where we are.
Those proposals that you laid out, we have a president who talks about wanting to reverse naturalized citizenship. So it's hard for me to imagine that any of those proposals would actually, I would think they would fall on deaf ears. But I will also say here in Hawaii, my understanding, and these are anecdotal numbers, I don't know the full number, so correct me if I'm wrong, around 48,000 illegal immigrants here in Hawaii, about half of those Filipino from the Philippines, many of them working in healthcare, as you mentioned, home healthcare, really areas that we need workers desperately.
Yes.
So are there steps that you would be willing to do or to take to try to protect some of those folks so that we can keep the care homes open?
Absolutely. And so that's where they've already quietly done these exceptions for certain disciplines. You notice it didn't get a lot of attention because I think that the current administration prefers not to ever strike a pose that is supportive of immigration. But the ag community really squawked when they saw some of the ag working communities being disassembled. That of course affects us with Kona coffee and Mac nuts and so on. So a lot of ag workers ended up getting basic protections. It should apply to healthcare too. It should apply to a lot of things. Again, I feel that we should go all the way and give people full citizenship if they've been in good standing and they haven't committed any crimes. So we will get there. I will always appeal to the administration for carve-outs or considerations if it will help our state. Look, that's what I've been doing with the military, trying to keep the peace, buying us time, and we'll talk more about that, I'm sure, buying us time to think it through with our advisory council and others. But a lot of times we do get compromise from them. Sometimes it doesn't get publicized because the way to deal with this administration is to not be in open public conflict, and then a lot of things can get done.
All right, we are just about at halftime now with the governor. We're going to take a short break. A lot more questions, including those coming from you, coming up right after the break. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back to Spotlight Now. We're continuing on our conversation with Governor Josh Green, and want to encourage those of you who are watching to continue to enter your questions and comments for the governor on Facebook. We'll continue to monitor them, as well as our email address here at spotlightnow@hawaiinewsnow.com.
And in the spirit of that, we want to bring in an email. I'm calling it up here. And thank you for those of you who are writing in the comments. There's quite a few of those as well. This is from Lori. What are you doing to promote state legislators in Kauai County to take steps to build sewer infrastructure for Kauai communities to deal with our 14,000 cesspools? Oahu has 11,000. This is our biggest barrier to building new homes. We know that the cesspool issue is a big one. We've covered it on this program. What can you say to Lori and others who are concerned about this?
So part of the discussion with the military was to have a $750 million appropriation from them as part of this $10 billion package to support Hawaii if the military does end up condemning any of the lands. Like I said, we bought a year. That was something I already talked to the head of the EPA, and we would use kind of the highest risk cesspools to start first, and that would mitigate the cost for people. So the state would put in $250 million, the feds would put $750 million, it'd be $1 billion over the course of 10 or 15 years. And that's what we would need to do. Again, this is a place where the green fee works very nicely. It's both a business opportunity to solve problems and have good workforce, impact, and also we would have money there to do the project. So legislators should be proposing that to us through the Green Fee Committee and straight to me and straight in legislation.
Let's talk a little bit about that military land lease and the negotiations that are happening. What update can you give us on the timeline in which you're now discussing these matters with the military? We know that they wanted this at one point saying at the end of this year. Obviously, we're a few weeks away from that, and it's going to take a little bit more time. Give us an update on that timeline and how conversations are going.
Yeah, they've been very cordial. Some of the military negotiators had to also split their time between this work and the other states and the large conflicts globally. They were taken over there to negotiate some of the terms of the Ukraine and Russia deal. So it kind of went on the back burner, and then we encouraged everybody to take a pause. So we have a year break now until next December. There's a thing called the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act. They would have had to put language in specifically to take the lands in that NDAA, and it didn't happen. And I'm glad, because in this particular case, we needed more time. I want more input. We have, like I said, this great group of people that are the advisors, that are our advisory council. And I also have my own team on this, an executive tiger team on this. And we have all sorts of people from the MAC and everywhere else giving me input. But we need this year. What the recommendation is for them to do some of these projects, like that cesspool project, like some of the geothermal projects that we've proposed, like some of the housing projects, to do that in good faith in this coming year as they work out the details of ultimately decreasing their footprint in Hawaii. And I suppose they will still always have the capacity to condemn the land, but it should be through kind of a collegial process that's based on our values. We have a year.
Okay. I want to ask you, Maui County just voted to phase out more than 6,200 short-term housing units. These short-term rentals, now converting them to homes for local families is the goal anyway. What are your thoughts on the county doing that, and would you support a statewide effort to do something similar?
Yeah, so 2 years ago, I signed the bill that allowed the counties to do that. So after the wildfire, we empowered the counties, the mayors and the county councils to make their own rules. That was giving local control, which was necessary. Big picture, I'll remind you, we have 89,000 short-term rentals in our state, 89,000. We're short 50 to 60,000 houses or units to house our people. If tomorrow we got rid of 2/3 of the short-term rentals, yes, it would have an economic impact, because some cleaning people and maintenance people might not have that direct job, but we would suddenly have housing for all of our people. Can you imagine that? So it is the right premise to push down on the exemptions. That's what they did. This thing that they just passed, like you said, brings back 6,200 units. It's a specialized list that had been given kind of like a grandfathered clause or an exemption. It's called the Minatoya list. It's necessary. Nobody wants to give up an economic opportunity, but another thing about these 89,000 short-term rentals, 52% of them are owned by mainland people. So let's just say tomorrow, theoretically, that no mainlanders still owned any short-term rentals, we would get like 45,500 rentals back. Again, our housing inventory would be satisfactory. Now, you can't just wave a magic wand and have 46,000 units, but you can apply certain laws and pressures. You can do it through taxation. It's one way. But in other places, for instance, you can only run a short-term rental if you live in the building. Like that's what they did in New York. And that greatly decreased the number of short-term rentals, increased their housing inventory, and hopefully it will make rents available and housing available to that community. In the end, you got to build more housing. That's the real bottom line here. But I think that the mayor did the right thing. Now, you're certainly going to get other people saying, hey, wait, I own a short-term rental. That was how I make money. Well, you should probably rent it out long-term, get a good rate, and don't speculate. Because what people were doing was they had a short-term rental. Short-term rentals bring in a lot more money than long-term rentals. They make 384% of what a regular rental does. In other words, they can get tons and tons of money from vacationers. When they're converted, we'll actually have housing for nurses and teachers and firefighters. Also, we're still going to have those jobs because you're still going to have to do maintenance. You're still going to have some people that service the properties. So that was always overstated. In general, we got to change things a little bit here in our state. These houses should be available to local families. So I'm glad that the advocates in Maui fought for this, Lahaina Strong. I'm glad the mayor signed it. It's hard to do bold things. And let's try it. It's going to happen over 3 to 5 years. It's not going to happen tomorrow. This will give people an opportunity to put their houses on the market, their units on the market. They will make profits. They'll sell them for a profit, and then local families will have houses, which in general will be good. And if it happens to go further to other counties, it's probably a good thing because we have a housing shortage all over.
We could probably talk on this matter for another half an hour, but we have a lot of different topics that we want to get to. So things are going to kind of popcorn around here. We're going to do some hard pivots in our topics just so that we can get some comments on you on each of these different issues that are impacting our state. So just going to popcorn on over to Aloha Stadium. If you can give us an update on where things are going there. Demolition was supposed to have begun. What can you tell us quickly about any updates with that project as people await? You mentioned the importance of this for tourism. Where do things stand right now?
So cranes have been scheduled. I'm told they're going to be bashing some of the old Aloha Stadium down in the spring, and it will keep us on track to get this thing built by 2028. That's the best plan. I'm going to meet with some additional funding potentials for us in the coming 3 weeks, and I'm seeking $400 million of additional funding to help us out. There's lots of ways to finance a stadium beyond the $400 million or so that's been appropriated. But I would like to see benefactors come in and help us with this. So yeah, we'll be destroying or demolishing the old stadium. It's just necessary. It's a question. People are going to say, well, we're having tough times. Why are you building a stadium? Well, you're building the stadium for 5 and 10 and 20 years from now and for the next generation. And it's a part of a modern society to have that opportunity.
We are approaching 1 year since the Alea Manu incident. 6 people lost their lives, numerous others very, very badly burned and injured. We are going to be talking to Director Mike Lambert later this month about his law enforcement efforts. He took on that role less than a year ago, really, with this as his mandate. What are you hoping for on New Year's Eve?
Well, I'm very proud of the legislature for giving me that bill. I was honored to sign it. When you lose 6 people to a firebomb, you have to take action. I mean, it was devastating, and again, heroic effort by Jim Ireland and his team at the county level and all the doctors at Straub and over at Queens. But we can't have these explosions. So Lambert is terrific. He's one of my favorite people. I was glad he came into our administration. Now they have the enforcement capacity. If people have these large cake fireworks, which are essentially firebombs, if they have them in their possession, they're illegal. And if they're using them, they're going to face very large fines, up to $25,000. And if you hurt anybody, you're going to be prosecuted. And those are now felony offenses. You'll do up to 10 years in jail. Nobody should be lighting off the very large aerials. If you're lighting off large aerials, you're running a risk of getting busted by Lambert and others, HPD and so on. If you get busted, you're going to go to jail. You're not going to be with your kids. So don't do it. Go to the public, the public fireworks shows. Sell your fireworks back to Lambert and his team. We will continue to set up buybacks. For that matter, sell your guns to Lambert and his team. We'll do buybacks there too. Don't shoot people, and we'll be a better society for it. It probably is going to take a couple years till everyone gets kind of wind of the new laws. We will prosecute though, and some people are going to be shocked. They're probably going to try to plea down their convictions because they're going to say, wait, you're going to send me to jail for this? Well, we will, because people die when the fireworks go wrong.
I want to switch gears and talk about the 30-meter telescope, an issue that has been in front of many leaders throughout the state of Hawaii. There is some rumblings and some talk amongst this community specifically that is concerned about this project, that there may be something that is coming up soon. Is there any update that you can provide us on where things stand with the 30-meter telescope, your involvement and discussions that may be happening about the future of this project and its future on Hawaii Island?
Yeah, I was asked from the top folks that want the telescope, the researchers, the coalition of international governments, to consider doing it on a separate location on the mountain. Now, I completely understand. In fact, am sympathetic to the position that is sacred on the mountain. As you know, I went and stood with the kupuna there when I was lieutenant governor because I felt that we should at least honor them. I personally think that if we compromise, there could be a way forward. And here's what I was asked to consider, and I wrote a letter with the congressional delegation, and that was to consider using a separate site, not the summit, that's already been used, basically a repurposed site. And just so everyone knows what I was doing and saying in that letter with the other leadership, I was saying we have heard the Kiai and respect their position, which is that the summit is sacred, that the protests were heard, and that if we are going to do something for the next generations and for the world that will show us the sky, that will help us in the spirit of navigation, do it on a separate site that's already been used and have a smaller footprint so that you can go forward. I don't know if ultimately that will satisfy people who feel very strongly that they must protest the building of any telescope, but it was a compromise, and that's all the letter was. It is meant to keep the dialogue open because the funders of this are going to make a decision sooner or later whether to go to Chile or Spain or wherever. At the end of the day, as I've said before, I'm not willing to sacrifice the cultural fabric of our state in conflict for anything, okay? In the moment, I said it about the telescope, but I will respect people's desire to have a harmonious existence together. That is more important to me than any one project. But I do think doing something extraordinary in Hawaii that is consistent with our navigators and ancestors could be, if described that way, something special for Hawaii. So I leave it up to the Mauna Kea Authority to make that case with those on the Big Island who have had concerns about any telescopes. But astronomy is special. It has a great deal of potential for young people on the Big Island. These are going to be future astronomers, PhDs, local kids. There's a lot to recommend it also. I know that sounds like I'm trying to have both sides of the argument. It's just very complicated, and that letter is meant to show that I'm willing to compromise if it will help.
Any response on that letter?
Yeah, everyone was pissed off, but that's pretty typical. I think a lot of people came and probably didn't understand. I was not pushing anything. Obviously, I'm not telling people go and start construction, and I'm not obviously going to ever say arrest anyone. That's not my style. But compromise is important, and there are big things that we need to do in our state. We've been talking about it. We compromise with the federal government. We don't let them take our people if they're kind people and in good standing, but we also acknowledge difference of ideology. If someone's a criminal, okay, then that's an immigration position. On Mauna Kea, maybe we should build if we can do it in a way that maintains the sacred and honors our past. Certainly we should do the other big projects, and the easiest one to all agree on is housing, I would think. As you know, I did fight some people on housing because people even when I proposed accelerating housing for our local families, a lot of people pushed back with kind of NIMBYism. But we should build along the rail. We should do what we can to bring in federal dollars to finish the rail project off, to do geothermal at least, maybe a little LNG to lower energy prices. We should move forward as a society and not just, rely on tourism. We are much more, and we have much more to share than one industry.
I want to get to some fun holiday questions in a moment, but first ask you to put your doctor hat on and talk about influenza. We know that the Department of Health is saying that the cases are surging. They're getting 911 calls, a lot of hospitalizations, and really putting a strain on our resources. We only have so many hospital beds.
Yes.
Lower uptake of the flu vaccine this season. What are your thoughts?
Well, that's a product of this national downward pressure on vaccinations, which is stupid. So, unfortunately, HHS, and its secretary have scared people about vaccinations, and there's been a lot of negative publicity on vaccinations. And ironically, it's now touching the main vaccination you would get right now, which is flu vaccine. Go get your flu vaccine. The mortality rate of getting the flu and then a subsequent pneumonia is very high if you're over 65 and you're not vaccinated. Sometimes it's as high as 25% in our elderly population dying of flu and pneumonia. It's no joke. So you really have to get your flu shot if you're vulnerable. I got my flu shot, believe me. And I'm not particularly vulnerable. I'm 55, okay? So get your flu shot. The same thing can be said honestly about all vaccinations. I believe in them. I'm not going to mandate vaccinations. That's not my MO. I understand we have different opinions on that in society sometimes, but get the flu shot if you're old or you have chronic disease. And otherwise, you can expect a very dangerous hospitalization. The COVID rates are down, and COVID has not been as severe, which is good. We want to prevent flu because we don't also want to have other exposures. Someday, we're going to have a bad outbreak of bird flu that crosses over to humans. If that happens, we're going to be back where we were before with COVID, and we're going to be asking ourselves, can we, be safe with an open society? We really don't want to ever do that again. So everyone, please get your flu shot.
This is going to be a stat question, but we are running out of time. But I want to ask you, with the legislative session coming up, this seemingly comes up every year, and that is the legalization of recreational use of marijuana. If that is something you believe would happen this legislative session, that this could be the year that this goes through. And also sports betting, legalizing some form of sports betting. The Honolulu prosecutor Steve Alm on this program says he's opposed to both. Your thoughts overall on these two measures, which could see its time this legislative session?
Sure. Well, I think it's safe to say that Steve was not smoking pot when he made that statement about legalized gambling. Okay, so he's a good friend of mine. He is a straight shooter. I respect him a lot. What I think will happen is that neither will pass this year. I think that the best thing to do, and this is what I've been telling some of my legislative colleagues, put it on the ballot at some point. Put it on the ballot, say in 2027. We're right now doing a task force on gambling. We have a lot of input coming in on marijuana. I'm not a pot smoker at all. It's not my thing, obviously, but some people choose that way of life. So they should, I think, have freedom as adults. So let them have freedom as adults in the future. But I think the state and our people should vote on this, because long-term legacies matter to me, and I really want our people to decide whether we should have gambling. We did check out how people feel about this. If we legalize gambling and the money went to housing, about 70% of our society seems to support it. So if we ever do legalize gaming, sports betting, I'm going to insist that dollars from that policy goes towards either Department of Hawaiian Homelands or just our general housing needs. And if marijuana ever is fully legalized, I'm going to insist that the revenues go towards treatment for some of the social ills that can come from it. I don't think the sky would fall under either circumstance, but I would like the people to vote on it.
Okay, let's get to those holiday questions, because we are approaching the end of the year and we want to get to some fun ones. So let's tick through those real quick. What's the best Christmas gift you ever received? And we know that you're Jewish, but
Yes.
we know that you have a sort of mixed house, if you will.
Yeah, dude, I'm half Christian and half Jewish. So best Christmas, I got a handheld Coleco football video game once that was awesome when I was about 11, and I found it weeks before and played it for 2 weeks before and continuously reboxed it before I actually received it on Christmas. That's how good it was.
What about the best one that you've ever given? Something that you're proud that stands in your mind.
I gave my mom a trip to Italy one time.
Oh, wow.
Which was a pretty good gift, I think.
I'd say so.
And that was as a thanks for her help putting me through medical school. So that was a pretty good gift. We gave ourselves a puppy last year
That's right.
through the family. So as everyone knows, Boba is now almost a year old, and she's a hellraiser. She ate, interestingly, connects to Christmas because she ate the Christmas lights off the Christmas tree a couple days ago and stood there. I'll try to get you a picture of it with her paw on the Christmas lights showing off when Jamie came home. And that Christmas tree light is dead now. So
Well, I hope the dog's okay.
dog is totally fine. This dog can eat everything. They ate a speaker the other day, but that was a pretty good gift to the kids.
Yeah.
Holiday movie. What's your favorite one?
My favorite holiday movie, Miracle on 34th Street, probably. Although I like Elf.
Yeah, who doesn't? Do you have a favorite family tradition, holiday tradition, something that the Greens do maybe every year?
Well, we always have a New Year's Eve party, which we stay up till midnight and we play Texas Hold'em with whoever's over. So legalize gambling in our house, for a couple bucks. So that's kind of a fun tradition. We don't open Christmas presents early, but we do an advent calendar, and we alternate between chocolate and a small gift for the entirety of December. So that's a tradition too.
Oh, that's very sweet. Last one. What's your New Year's resolution? You can give us a personal one. You can give us a professional one too, but we prefer the personal.
So my personal resolution is to spend more time with my daughter this year. In the beginning of the year, as you know, you miss your kid when they go off to college, and we've gone through quite a lot in the recent past. So as parents do, and so I'm going to spend more time with her, and then of course Sam and Jamie too. But this lifestyle, being the first family, does mean that there's a lot of time away from each other, and so I'm going to try to spend more time with them.
All right, your final message. This is our last time speaking with you this year. Starts off with a bang, entering into the legislative session in 2026 in January. Your final message to the residents and viewers of Hawaii right now who are tuning in as we enter this holiday season.
This is a great time to care for one another, and people have been doing it. We went through a lot this fall when people were hungry and we all came together. I think this year is going to be more of that. So understand that we're going to focus on the essentials, housing and food security for people. But if you can lovingly help someone on your street or from your church or in your community, please do. I will navigate the larger questions of enough resources and jobs for us, but it is still necessary that we love the people around us. So do some of that. We're going to keep doing that. We're going to give more to charity as a family. If you can do the same, that's great. And if you can't, just volunteer, because Hawaii is extraordinary. We're actually doing better than most other states, maybe all other states, but it's a turbulent time. So please do that if you can. We're addressing the big challenges, but I need you guys all to care for each other.
Okay, thank you so much, Governor Green. Have a happy Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, all the celebrations. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
From the moment you wake up.
Hawaii News Now brings you the stories that impact your day.
With more on the breaking news, we go live to Casey Lund.
Ready with the push alert? I'm going live. We have an update to the breaking news we brought you this morning on Sunrise.
Okay, guys, as soon as this wraps, toss to Mahia.
And we've been covering this story all day.
Now we go live to Mahia for a new development.
Stand by for breaking news. They just captured the suspect.
That's confirmed?
Yes, sources just confirmed it.
The news you need the moment it breaks.
Here on Hawaii News Now.
First alert traffic is like always having a helpful passenger right next to you.
There's a crash up ahead in the left lane.
When we see a backup, we'll tell you live on TV.
That doesn't look too good.
And send an alert to your phone.
I'll type, you drive.
First alert traffic on TV, streaming, and on the Hawaii News Now app.
Keeping you and your ohana safe.
Spotlight Now with Yunji Denise and Ryan Kalei-Suchi. Connecting you with newsmakers from throughout our islands. Going in depth with Hawaii's leaders. And taking your questions live. Spotlight Now, where Hawaii comes to talk.
Well, our last conversation of 2025 with Governor Josh Green covered a lot of topics, of course, starting off talking about the state of our economy. The governor is saying he's going to have to make some changes to the tax codes and tax breaks that were supposed to be coming to island residents beginning next month. But the governor is saying he's putting that on hold in order to ensure that the state remains fiscally sound.
Yeah, and even with those measures, he says that he will recover about $1.8 billion, expecting to spend some of that to help the communities that need it most with the federal cuts, those affected by the SNAP cuts and also the medical cuts, but saying that he still will need to tap into the rainy day fund even with those cuts.
Yeah, but saying pretty confidently that he believes that the state is going to be in a good position when it comes to some of those measures that are going to be taken. We also heard from him about a variety of topics interesting about TMT, his notes about a possible negotiation that's happening to find a new location for the 30-meter telescope. The first time that we've had that conversation with him.
Yeah, the idea of perhaps using one of the decommissioned sites to actually stand up a telescope, and maybe that would be more palatable to folks on Hawaii Island. We'll see. He was met with some pushback once the news of that letter got into the community, so interesting to hear his thoughts there. Also, he wants to bring marijuana and legalize gambling to the voters as opposed to having the legislature make that call.
Yeah, so we will always a lot to talk about with the governor. If you miss any portion of the conversation, you can always catch the full interview on our website at hawaiinewsnow.com. Next week, we will be closing out the year and remembering 2025, catching up and talking more about the economy with UHERO economist Carl Bonham.
Yeah, he's going to present more details about their estimates for the next year. And also we'll be catching up with Daryl Huff. We're going to take a look back at the big stories of 2025.
We hope you'll join us right here next week for another episode of Spotlight Now. Until then, take care. Aloha.